After all these years, I'm still wondering where do I put the Z in the Gewürztraminer when I have to write it down. I'm always confused, but this is such an exciting grape. It means peppery, that's a peppery grape, and there's very few producers in South Africa producing that very expressive cultivar. Altydgedacht is one of them, and we're tasting the 2020 Gewürztraminer. What do you say about it, Cathy?
Well, take a look at the color. It's, again, quite light because of the vintage, but there is, if you look at it very carefully, a little bit of extra depth and a little bit of extra hue in the middle of the wine. And that
You have to remind people that Gewürztraminer is not actually a white grape. It's a pink grape.
It's a pink
skin.
grape. So that is what it gives to you. That's a little bit of a clue that potentially this is not a white grape. But then it's the nose that speaks to you immediately on this side. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Gewürztraminer, you might immediately think that it is a muscat grape because it's grapey, but it's also spicy, which is what the Gewürzi means. And for me, there's rose petals. So the floral element is rose petals. There's Turkish Delight, which, as we know, is flavored with rose water. For me, there's always a little bit of orange or loquat,
Yeah.
and also some gingerbread, which again I suppose is the spicy element. You may confuse this with Viognier, because sometimes people think there's apricot in Gewürztraminer,
Yes.
and they're always looking at Viognier with apricot. But this has got too much of that rose petal element.
You
for
will
this
not
to be
find
a
rose
Viognier.
petals in Viognier. You will
No.
probably not find. You can find some orange rinds, but it's still the ginger as well. That in the gingerbread, it's not a Viognier character.
So, absolutely not. So rose petal, orange rind, ginger, this is for me speaking to me about Gewürztraminer. And then on the palate, let me just take a sip because I've spoken so much I've forgotten.
On the nose, the Turkish Delight, that's Istanbul. That's
Oh, right.
really this very delicate. It can be cheap aromatics they use in Turkish Delight, but the real one made with real rose water is so elegant, and that's what we have on this Gewürztraminer.
Absolutely. And it's not the Turkish Delight that's been dusted with so much icing sugar.
Yes.
That what you're getting is the icing sugar. It's a real pucker. Oh, I have that, an English word I haven't used for a long time, pucker, Turkish Delight. And then on the palate, the key characteristic for me for Gewürztraminer is that it always has a little bit of phenolics on it and a slightly little bitter lift. But to me, that's almost like an aloe bitter lift. It's not like that horrible nail polish my mother used to put on my nails to make me stop biting my nails. It's really not that bitter. It's not a quinine or quinine bitterness. It's just a little bit of aloe bitterness. And Gewürztraminer is a naturally low acid grape.
That's why it's confused with Viognier so often.
Correct. So it is lowish in acidity, but here this one has actually got about 6 grams per litre acid in it, and it's also very dry. Sometimes your Gewürztraminers are fermented to about 6 or 7 grams per litre sugar, but this one they've really taken it way back to give us a lovely dry drink.
I think people tend to, because they want Gewürztraminer to be true to its name and extremely aromatic, they push the maturity a bit too much in our on a warm climate. While this one, it's Durbanville wine of origin, even if it says wine of origin Cape Town on the label. And it's a fairly cool area, allowing to get the maturity perfect. We are 13.5 alcohol, so no residual sugar, but a middle palate, slightly oily. You can find some viscosity, but it's not this overly round and sometimes heavy Gewürztraminer you could find even in Alsace with the global warming.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, in Alsace, they might be at 14.5% alcohol. And then they would have, but you can check if you go like this, there is some viscosity and some oiliness to it because you are getting a little bit of the tears running down it. I don't rely on tears too much when I'm judging a wine, but sometimes it's just that little clue that can push you over the edge towards...
Both for high alcohol, for high sugar, or when you got no sugar and no alcohol like this one, it means that the body of the wine, the glycerol
content
of
is
the
quite
wine,
high.
that's, yeah.
I think this is really sparking, and once you've smelt this, you never forget it. So it's a real benchmark wine for you to remember now, forever and ever, and a day.
And it's very easy for people to make sweeter style of Gewürztraminer to enhance the fruit perception, but having that level of complexity on the nose, like you say, rose petal, flowers, spiciness, touch of orange, but still keeping the palate dry, not limiting it to the semi-sweet category. That's a beautiful wine.
It's a very clever wine, and
Yeah.
I know I'm not the food and wine matching expert here, but I would like to drink this with a curry, because I think that
But not a hot curry.
not a hot curry,
Not hot curry, because you would need sugar to balance the hot curry.
the hot curry, but I would say that it would just add, it would be a lovely floral aromatic addition to the curry
But
that I'm
classic
having.
Asian stir fries.
That would be lovely, but the dryness is what would work
The
with them.
dryness, and we'll cut with the soya sauce that you will use with it. It's beautiful.
Smart.
Wine. Smart.
Pretty
smart
smart.
wine. Altydgedacht 2020 Gewürztraminer with one Z in the middle.
In the
somewhere.
middle, in the middle.